Most of us have burned ourselves at one time or another, perhaps on a stove or on a candle, so we know how painful it can be, and can only imagine how it would feel to be completely engulfed in flames. Being scalded with boiling water is no joke either, so just imagine being submerged into a whole pot of it. Whatever, don't. I'm not your torturer. These are just another two of the worst forms of execution in our medieval punishment series. Be warned, this video is graphic. Boiling to death was often used as a method of execution in the Middle Ages across many countries. It would take quite a while to boil to death. As soon as a person is dropped into the bubbling water, first their skin, then their flesh, and finally their fat would start to broil. They would probably go into shock, but not die until their internal organs began to cook. It's an extremely brutal punishment. In the Middle Ages, according to legend, William II, the Soul's Lord of Hermitage Castle, became prey to this special kind of torment too. Dessalles was a nobleman who had a penchant for dabbling in the dark arts. Whether this is to be believed or not, William seems to have been a rather unpleasant man who was a known traitor and conspired against the Scottish king, Robert the Bruce. It is said that he had some of his servants surgically attached to yoke-type devices so that they could move heavy objects like a pack animal. All of his barbaric acts were performed with the help of his demonic familiar, and he became so evil and cruel that his people revolted against him to end his reign of tyranny. Apparently, his supernatural powers could not be contained, so the locals forged a special chain to hold him and dragged him to the top of Nine Stane Rig in Scotland, near the English border. Because he could not be killed by conventional means, he was boiled in a large cauldron, not of water but of molten lead, in around 1321. The second version of the soul's death is rather more boring, but it is the one that most historians believe actually happened in 1320. He conspired with the English against Robert the Bruce. The plot failed, and Dessalles was rounded up with his fellow collaborators and taken to Dumbarton Castle, where he was imprisoned and later died. In another tale of human boiling, a cook from the household of the Bishop of Rochester was found guilty of putting poison into the soup meant for his master and his guests, causing the deaths of two of them. He was publicly cooked to death at Smithfield, London, in 1531. Maid's servant was also boiled alive for poisoning her mistress that same year. The punishment was used across the Holy Roman Empire for queen forgers, fraudsters, and murderers, as well as in Britain, although there the preferred liquid was oil rather than water. In Nuremberg, a man was boiled alive in oil for raping and murdering his own mother. A case of boiling in oil was recorded as late as 1687. At Bremen, Germany, for a man who had aided and abetted some coin forges. In antiquity, the ancient Druids burned people and animals as a form of sacrifice. A large figure would be made from wooden straw in the effigy of a giant human. The body, arms, and legs of the wicker man would be filled with criminals before the figure was set alight. By the Middle Ages, there were three different types of execution by burning. The first was to attach the prisoner to the stake with chains or iron hoops and pile up bundles of wood around the base of their feet. This had the highest visual impact, and was the favorite method of the Spanish Inquisition and the British. It produced a long, lingering, and agonizing death that the authorities believed was fitting for a heretic, because it would take quite a while for the flames to reach the level of the head. Those found guilty of treason or witchcraft would be strangled first in a show of mercy. For convicted witches in Scotland, the strangulation actually formed part of the sentence. Many women were burned alive for civil offenses. The punishment was a substitution for hanging, which was considered indecent for women as it exposed their mangled body in public, although in many cases they were first strangled into unconsciousness so that they would be deprived of sensation, as if that's any consolation. This was seen as an act of humanity authorized by the English nation.